know what the data says, know what your organization's comp philosophy is, where they're targeting. And when you go in, don't be confrontational, be inquisitive and say, well, here's where I am versus the data. Can you tell me why you see this? Is it about the company or is it about me? Maybe take it, there's something I can do better? And turn the situation around a little bit and give the person on the other side of the table the ability to respond in kind.
Welcome aboard the 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast.
Rock on. You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
It's a show by professional pilots for professional pilots.
I looked back at them and I said, I don't think we're at the right airport. And they go, I don't think we are either.
Each episode, we bring you fascinating conversations with industry experts.
I think I should be a go-to on how to deal with 63, 64-year-old men.
You're going to chase it like a dog chasing a school bus.
But we're not just about the serious stuff. We're here to have fun.
And I like to sit with pilots a lot of times. I always say they're better looking than Tom Cruise.
It's a whole thing.
The 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast is your destination for everything aviation, whether you're cruising in the flight levels or just starting your journey. All right, Max, we are so excited to be joined again by our friend and colleague, Dr. Chris Broyhill from the Air Comp Calculator. Dr. Broyhill,
nobody likes to
hear
about pilot pay. I don't know why we do this, when pilots aren't really interested.
It's funny that that's always our most popular and most downloaded episodes, isn't it?
So I'll tell you guys, first of all, it's great to be here as usual. I will tell you that I cannot tell you how many people come to me and say, I heard about you on 21.5 or I listened to you on 21.5. So obviously your audienceship is growing in general out there, but the amount of clients I get, or just people coming by and just saying, we've heard you on 21.5 it's been very, very rewarding. So it's cool to see your presence getting out there, and it's just cool to see the reaction. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I think this is a great medium to talk about this stuff too, because it's hard sometimes to put this stuff like in an email to a lot of your clients or potential clients and stuff. So I think that the podcast format lends really well to breaking this down, because it's not easy to cram into an email that people will stay with all the way through.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
All right. Well, Dr. Broyhill, as always, Q4 seems like the most pertinent time to talk to you. For many of us flight department managers and professional pilots on the business aviation side, this is when we're talking to our reporting executives or principals about raises or compensation for the next year. So I will turn the floor over to you to maybe tell us what the data has been showing you for the latest marketplace and kind of where you see things going.
Sure. Well, thanks. So the data for 2025, I just was speaking at AIN does a corporate aviation leader summit. They do 3 of them a year. They have 2 of them for aviation directors, and then they do 1 for the maintainers. And I was just at the one for the maintainers in Phoenix, and we got to do a big discussion over this. So I have a whole keynote address I gave about it. So I'm a geek at heart, and a closet geek. I didn't know that until I got into this, doing the compensation thing and playing around in Excel. I spent entirely too much time in Excel. So whenever the new survey data comes out, I'm always on the edge of my seat for it. What's it going to do? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? What are the trends going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what we see this year is, so first of all, to set the stage, survey data is current as of the quarter of the year it occurs in. So the data is released as current as of Q1 of this year. And everybody says, well, survey data is always old. Well, to get back up on my soapbox again, it has to be old. It's federal law. So you cannot release survey data as soon as it's collected. It has to go into safe harbor for the agreed upon time is about 3 months, 90 days. And the reason is because it avoids price fixing in real time. So what they're afraid of, and this is all a function of the Sherman Antitrust Act, what they're afraid of is people getting together and fixing prices. And if you know what it is in real time, then everybody can set the market accordingly. So if you let it lag for a little bit, people have to be more strategic in the way that they approach these sorts of. Oh, by the way, as an addition to add or something else, and I've written articles about this, but in case some of your audience members haven't seen them, those little summits you have at the airfield, if you're a director or you're a chief pilot, and you're talking to your your peers about what you're paying your folks, that's a violation of federal law. So, because that's price fixing. And if people find out you've been doing that and somebody reports you, and I'm not saying anybody would, but so the next time you're having a discussion about what you're paying your people with somebody else who's paying their people and you're in the same line of work doing the same things, think twice about it, because the feds would not take a very high view of that.
I have a question about that. What if it's like a group of independent contractors, like everybody that flies whatever G5s, and they get together in the local market and be like, hey, listen, we should all raise the price. That's
okay, so
also
that's
illegal,
so
right?
that is that too can be construed as price fixing. Yes, anytime you are colluding together as a group to set a price for whatever service it can be, it's price fixing.
Dr.
So,
Broyhill, that sounds a lot like a union to me.
yeah, well, it's the funny thing is it's the government, quote, trying to protect us, unquote. So I have certainly had mixed feelings about that, but yeah, it does sound a little bit like that for sure. But
That's funny.
But getting back to the data, so what we saw, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and from the period from survey year 2023 to 24, the rise was like about 4.2 or 4.3%, I think. Maybe it was 4.1, I don't remember. But for this year, 24 to 25, it was 3.1%. So a full percentage drop, 25% drop in how much private industry compensation grew. So now the corollaries between the growth of private industry wages and business aviation have been mixed for sure, but it made me feel like before we got the data that we were probably going to see a drop in business aviation compensation increases. That doesn't mean that business aviation compensation itself was dropping. What it means is the rate of increase was going to slow. And that's in fact what we saw with the data. Last year, across all the positions I tracked, the average growth rate was about 10%, somewhere between 9 and 10%, depending on the survey mix. This year, it's less than 6. It's about 5.8-ish, 5.5-ish, depending on the survey mix. So it shows that compensation growth is slowing. Now, for some positions, pilots, it's still probably growing a little bit more rapidly, but for others, it's not. So what we are seeing is the effect of, I think it's a final round of the COVID catch-up, because what happens, and I mapped this out, but we had COVID, and then everybody got rid of too many pilots too quickly, or too many people too quickly. And then the airlines were scrambling for bodies. We're scrambling for bodies. So in business aviation, you see this big spike in 2021, huge spike. And that spike comes down to 2022, and then it goes back up again in 2024. And then it comes down back into 2025. So what's happening is we had the first spike. People are going, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? There's some more corrections to be made. Oh, I guess we need to raise compensation again. It goes up again. And now it's coming down. So I think we're in the final round of the post-COVID compensation shuffle, if you will. And I think we're coming back to kind of where we've been before-ish, where we're ahead. We're going to lead private industry. We're almost twice, our wages are growing about twice as fast as private industry, but it's not crazy like it was previously. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind. It's not crazy. It's good because it's, I would say it's probably more sustainable. Because when I'm out giving the presentations and we've got this crazy compensation growth, the question I keep hearing from aviation managers, consultants, and professionals alike is this crazy growth sustainable? At what point is an aircraft owner or somebody just going to go, you know what, enough? I'm done. I can't. We can't keep doing this. So I think it's better if the growth is slower and more sustainable, and then I think that's largely what we're seeing now. The question is, what's that going to look like going forward? And it's anybody's guess. We'll have to wait and see. The economy is still reasonably stable. The airlines are hiring again. And whenever the airlines are hiring again in earnest, that tends to increase wage pressure on for pilots, at least. And one of the things I said when I was talking to the maintainers was, you should be kind of happy when the pilots are getting more money, because a rising tide floats all boats. What happens when somebody has to look, at compensation in a flight department, even if the pilots need to be paid more, they don't just raise the pilots, they raise everybody, because they look at this and go, well, we can't raise the pilots X amount of percent without doing something for the maintainers or the schedulers or the flight attendants or whoever. And I had several of the maintainers come up to me after that presentation I gave and said, "You're absolutely right. That's what happened in our department. They had to pay the pilots more, and we got more as a result." So pilot compensation wage pressure is good, not just good for pilots, it's good for the industry. It's good for everybody. So I think we're going to see a more sustainable rate of growth. The airlines are hiring again, as I mentioned. Um, they're still delivering business jets like crazy. Gulfstream's, the deliveries of the G700 are taking off. The Global 8000 has been approved. I mean, you've got all these new airframes, and I can tell you that now that bonus depreciation is permanent. My wife is an aviation transactions attorney, and so she has to kind of strap in for the last 2 months of every year because these people are, "Hey, I want to buy an airplane in 2 weeks so I can get the depreciation." And so it's a crazy time of year. So the activity we're seeing is not abating. So I don't think that, and we really haven't fixed any of the problems. I'm worried about pilots. I'm worried about maintainers. The average age for maintainers in business aviation is 57. So I'm worried about that. There's both of the elements there to be concerned with. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next survey year. If I had to bet on it, I would say probably it's going to be growth like what we've seen the previous survey year. I don't think we're going to see the crazy growth again, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's so. I would be curious how much you correlate your data with the airline hiring numbers, like, and how much that lags, right? So if the major airlines hire 10,000 pilots in a year, then in that following year, do you see more of that exponential growth in the business aviation side, and how far that lags and how much that correlates, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. I'm making a note of it because I think it's a great idea. I don't know where I get those numbers, but it'd be interesting to see if higher and lower to just kind of start tracking those two indices side by side and see if there's a correlation. That'd be fascinating to see. Perfect thing for a geek like me to kind of follow around with.
Yeah, it does seem like just anecdotally, you know, the airlines weren't hiring that much this year, the majors, and subsequently, we've seen more people kind of in standstill here in our local market in business aviation. There's just been less growth, less opportunity, and so we've kind of seen wage growth. It's just a supply and demand kind of a thing. Just so in our current market, but I'm not trying to price fix or anything, but that's been our observation here. So you do have to think there's got to be some correlation here. All right, so Dr. Broyhill, I imagine that you notice this time of year things are heating up when people are buying reports for the AirComp calculator, right? And I know you've kind of restructured things a little bit. So, there's always been an offering for somebody like me, the department manager, where I'm going to go in there and I'm going to buy, 2 or 3 reports, or depending on how big my flight department is. But what if I'm just the line pilot, just the guy that wants to get a report just so I can kind of see where I'm at and I'm not counting on my director to do anything? Is there an avenue for somebody to kind of just as more of a regular employee to get a report?
Absolutely. We have one report packages, and I sell more of those than any other product in my inventory. And it allows people to click on, buy one report. They get to run it themselves if they want to, and they can be in and out of there in 15 minutes from the time they sign on, pay their fee and run the report. The single report is $350. And that's a standard report for just base salary and total cash compensation. If you've got a comp package that includes long-term incentives, then you buy a plus report, which is $50 more, which maps out total direct compensation, which says where you should be with, both or with a base salary and total cash, and then whatever long-term incentive payments you get. And then when people do that, we have 3 levels. I've got the AirComp Club that people can subscribe to. But what I do is there are discount levels associated with the AirComp Club. So if you buy one report, I automatically put next to your name or the account you set up in the calculator. I automatically put you as a basic member in the AirComp Club. So the next time you buy a report, if you choose to, it's 10% off.
Oh, cool.
If you buy 2 reports, you become a next level up and it's 15% off. And if you buy 5 reports for whatever reason, then the next time when you buy is 25% off. So there's different ways to do that. And the goal is to, for people to have the ability to check what their compensation rates are versus the industry. And either use those for their own knowledge or for negotiation with their boss, or maybe they're getting a proposal from a new employer that they're trying to compare versus the data. I get that one all the time.
I was going to say, yeah, we don't talk as much about that. It's more like, oh, I'm trying to get the raise, but what if you're just trying to cross-check the job offer, right?
Yeah. I had a guy. This is an interesting story. I had a guy that he's a helicopter pilot, and he was in Dubai, and an EMS operation made him a offer. He's obviously a U.S. pilot, but he was working in Dubai, and he's working oil and natural gas. Which, by the way, in case you didn't know that, if you're a helicopter guy, that's where the money is flying oil and natural gas. Those guys make more than anybody. So the offer they gave him was below the 10th percentile of helicopter pilots in the U.S. It was like absurdly low. And so I ran his numbers and I sent it back to him. And so you can buy the concierge level of any report. And if you buy a concierge report, then I run the report for you, and then I give you my remarks on where you are versus the data. And I said, dude, unless you're desperate to get back to the U.S., this is not an offer I would take. 90% of people in these jobs are making more money than you are. So it's not worth it unless you really need to be back in the United States for whatever reason. So that's, to your point, when people are getting cross-checking job offers, that's where the reports can come in very handy.
Right. Yeah. That's valuable. And especially for those expats, we get a fair amount of emails from expats where they'll be like, "Hey, I'm looking to come back," and they're just not in touch with what's going on here. And so it's great that you can provide that service to folks. Now, back to the line pilot that gets the report, and they say, I've got the numbers now. I'm going to go in and I'm going to get my raise. I'm going to throw this on the desk of the chief pilot, and off we go. As we have talked in previous episodes, and if you haven't listened to any of our previous conversations with Dr. Broyhill, I highly recommend that you do, because we get into a little bit about the nuance of how you negotiate and how you use the data. Just slamming the report down on the desk and saying, I want to be paid more, is probably not going to work. There is some strategy to being able to use the data. And I know we've talked about this before, Dr. Broyhill, but can you share a couple of tips for folks once they do have the report on what are some good ways to actually guide the conversation, use the data correctly to frame a productive conversation with your supervisor?
Well, first thing I would say is you need to understand the data. So I've had more than one person, when they've bought a report, then they've subsequently called me and said, can you just walk me through this so I know what I'm looking at? Now, after every report, there's an in-depth discussion of the methodology. There's a little bio of me in there, just so that they know it's not being pulled out of thin air. But if they want me to talk them through the methodology and to give them a description of what the charts are actually saying, I can do that, and I don't charge anything for that. So that, first of all, know what the data is telling you. Know what percentiles are and how percentiles work, because a lot of people don't understand that. And then I would say it's probably not a bad idea if you know what the compensation philosophy is in your company/department. And you can pick up on that if you just do a little subtle research. Does your company target the 50th percentile? Does your company target the 75th percentile? Know that before you go in. And then if you map out your compensation and it's not at the level that your company says it's targeting, then at least you've got some legs to stand on, and you don't look like you're just, to your point, throwing the report down. I think what I would say is that you sit down, you find out where your compensation is, or you have a discussion about it, and then you slide the report across the table to them and say that the data is indicating that I am not hitting those same, our targets or whatever. And can you tell me why that is? Is it a function of our company? Is it a function of my performance? Can you tell me why I am where I am versus the data? And that by making it an interrogatory versus a confrontation, you can kind of disarm the person you're talking with and give them the floor to talk. And the biggest value I think that I bring to a discussion like that is I am a disinterested third party. I don't really care what anybody makes. And what I care about is the data. And the data is the data. So where you are, the data speaks for itself. Where you are versus the data is where you are versus the data. But that puts the onus on the supervisor to explain why you may not be where you think you should be, and makes them back. And then they say, well, wait, the one that that you can't get around is the supervisor that goes, well, I just don't believe this data. And I've encountered that. So there's this one management company out there. It's one of the larger ones. And I have more clients that are I'll call them, they're client aviation managers. They are in charge of accounts. I
Okay.
have more clients, lead pilots and cams from that management company than I do from any other one, because they don't trust the data the company is providing them. And the company is very arrogant about this. And what they say is, well, we pay what we pay. And I'm just like, so what does that mean? Well, we pay what we pay, and we don't pay that for that because this is what we pay. And I'm just like, isn't it? So just me, or is that circular logic? I mean, but so you're going to have the bosses that are just not going to believe the data, and that's unfortunate, but they're out there. I would tell you that they're in the minority. The majority of people are going to look at the data. So what's happened? I'm working with a major company in Dallas right now, where they took one of my reports and they went to their HR comp people, and their HR comp people are going, huh. So last week I had a conference call with them and their HR comp people, and they went, huh, well, that's really interesting. And now I'm going to talk to the VP in charge, because they're not challenging the data. And I've got, there's like about 7 different Fortune 500 companies whose compensation people come to me every year and have me build compensation ranges for everybody in their flight department. That doesn't mean that they use everything I provide as the gospel. It just means it's another tool in their tool bag. When they're doing what they do, they've got another source of data that I'm providing. And in the AirComp calculator report has become increasingly accepted, but people know what they are when they see them, which is fantastic. So they've developed a credibility of their own, where people see them and saw it's the AirComp calculator. Wow, okay, well, I understand. And that helps as well. So I guess to recap, I do tend to go on. Sorry about that. Know what the data says. Know what your organization's comp philosophy is, where they're targeting. And when you go in, don't be confrontational. Be inquisitive and say, well, here's where I am versus the data. Can you tell me why you see this? Is it about the company, or is it about me? Maybe take it, there's something I can do better? And turn the situation around a little bit, and give the person on the other side of the table the ability to respond in kind.
I think another really important thing on your report is to know there's a lot of different delineations, whether you're a captain or a senior captain or whatever. And I think it's important to maybe get some color from you on how those things are where you categorize yourself, and be able to support that too. Because if you put the whole report in front of somebody that says, I should be paid this, and they're like, well, what makes you a senior captain versus a captain? I think you have to be ready to answer that question and support your category as much as, where the data is coming from, right?
So what I've done now, the AirComp calculator report actually has a job description at the top of it. So I built job descriptions into the reports so people can use those to compare them versus their actual responsibilities. I will tell you, the most ambiguous delineation in the business aviation industry is the delineation between captain and senior captain. It's basically, what do you want it to be? I mean, for some people, I think the whole reason it exists is because it started out in corporations and they had pay bands, and they reached the top of a pay band for captain. Well, we want to promote this guy or gal. We need another rank on top of that. Oh, instead of a captain, let's make him a senior captain. And that puts another pay band on top of that. But in terms of what delineates it, if you want to be firm about it, for some companies, it's tenure. How long have you been with the company? And somewhere along the line, you magically become a senior captain. For other companies, does the job have any managerial or significant additional duty required of it? Like, are you the standards captain? Are you the training captain? Are you the chief captain for that make if you operate multiple makes of airplane, are you the chief captain for that aircraft? Usually there's some kind of way I can delineate it. But if people ask me, I just tell them what I just told you and say, it's whatever you want it to be. Just be able to support it in terms of whatever argument you choose to make.
Yeah, I think that's one of the struggles. Go ahead, Max.
I was just saying, in my mind, that captain and senior captain is kind of it ebbs and flows depending on the market. Like if you say, hey, of my 10 buddies that fly out of Scottsdale, none of them have been at their job more than 3 years, and I've been here 5 years. So I'm stay here longer than the average in my market. Maybe that makes me a senior captain rather than just a captain, because you'd be hiring me at a new job as a captain. Like I feel like if you're there longer than the average, maybe that makes you senior, and that average certainly moves around with the market, especially in the last 5 years.
When I was hiring pilots at Exelon, when I was a director of aviation there many years ago, you came on as a captain or a senior captain when I hired you. And basically, it was a function of your experience in the industry. If you were relatively new and inexperienced, overall, from an overall perspective, you were a captain. Now, if you stayed with us long enough and gained experience, could you be promoted to senior captain? Of course. But if you were more experienced, maybe more gray haired, had some more hours under your belt, then we hired you as a senior captain. And that was because we recognized that we're paying for more experience here, and more experience demands a higher price tag. And I just wanted to be fair about that. I think bringing everybody in, in the same grade when you've got varying levels of experience. And what happens invariably in that situation is you might have a pay range that's, really wide, and you're going to bring people in at different rates of levels of experience, and you're going to pay them at different places on that pay band or on that pay range. Invariably, pilots being pilots, they're going to get together and they're going to talk about it, and they're going to get pissed off because they're going to say, well, why are you making 20 grand more than me? I mean, what the heck? We do the same job. So you just have to be really careful about that, because if you think these guys and gals aren't going to get in the cockpit at flight level 410 and talk about their compensation, you're living in a dream world, because they definitely will do that. So
let's take a quick break to tell you about a friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. Tim is a certified financial planner who specializes in helping professional pilots chart a smarter financial course. Whether you're focused on retirement, investment management, or strategic tax planning, Tim brings the tools and insight to help you make the most of your career and beyond. He's also the host of the Pilot's Portfolio podcast, where he breaks down real-world financial strategies designed specifically for pilots. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life.
Well, and that's one of the benefits of business aviation over the airlines, is that if you do lose your job, at the airlines, and you are lucky enough to get a job in another airline, you start at the very bottom, at the base. And in business aviation, your experience translates over to the next job, whether that's with a type rating and a larger airplane that you can move laterally to, or also, like you said, your depth of experience, how many type ratings, how long you've been doing this, how many operations you manage, that can carry over to keep your pay, hopefully on parity with where you were. If you do lose your job and have to move laterally, where at the airlines, you're starting back over. And so I think that's important.
Absolutely. I think in our industry, sometimes we get a little bit too obsessed with type ratings and time and type. I mean, I hate to be, a little bit flippant, but at the end of the day, an airplane's an airplane. You pull back, the houses get smaller. You push forward, they get bigger. Of course, you pull back too long, they get bigger as well. But they all work the same. They have hydraulic systems, they have electrical systems, they have engines. I mean, I've learned probably, and you guys are probably the same boat. I don't know how many different airplanes I've learned. And you know what? They're basically all the same. You got to memorize a few different numbers, a few different procedures, but they basically all work the same. I say that because I think oftentimes, let's say you're hiring somebody to fly a new shiny piece of iron like a G600 or a G700. You're hiring off the street and you're typing them in the jet. If you got a new somebody with a relatively low level of experience and you're typing them in the jet, that's one thing. But if you get a guy or a gal that's got several thousand hours and they got all kinds of time in other heavy airplanes, and you're just putting a G700 type on them, and you think you're going to lowball them because they're less experienced than the G700, you need to be really careful about that, because they're going to do a lot more with a little of experience in a new type than somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience will do. And they'll be maturing it much more quickly because they know what to look for. They know how to run the wickets. They know how to get to a higher level of proficiency more quickly because they've done it so many times before in so many different airplanes.
Yep.
I think that bothers me a lot when I see that occur.
I would say this is kind of being sarcastic, but kind of not. The real value of people having time and type is usually working the cabin management system in the back, and like a lot of that. How does this seat? There's a lot of that where you're like, oh wow, this is actually valuable that this guy's been gal's been on the plane before because they could figure it out, how to get the boss's music playing. But no, to your point, it's right. I got one more question when it comes to the qualifications, and this is a challenge, I think, for folks like Max and I, right? It's a 2-pilot, 1-airplane operation, right? And there's usually one person that's managing the plane. There's that title. I've heard a million different titles for the guy that basically wears all the hats, right? You could call him chief pilot, director of operation, senior captain, all of those titles kind of fit. And to me, like a chief pilot title has more of like, I'm managing a bunch of other pilots. I'm in sort of like a personnel role, right?
Yes.
And a director of aviation is more like I'm making budgets and I'm kind of making bigger maintenance decisions about the plane and things like that. So it's like we fit in some of the director of aviation buckets, some kind of the chief pilot, but not really. Like personally, I think the chief pilot is a weird title for a 2-pilot, 1-airplane deal. But again, sometimes the owner of the airplane, right, or the principal, the chief pilot in their mind just means like my airplane guy, So it can be kind of weird. But how do you counsel somebody like Max or I, where we're the head guy of the plane, and you can make it whatever title you want. How do we use the report?
Set the record straight right now, once and for all.
What I will tell you is the reason that chief pilot often gets used instead of director of aviation for that job is because somebody in the equation is a cheapskate. And the compensation level associated with chief pilot is an easier sell. That's the reason why. There's no other reason than that. There's this compensation study I do every year for this one group. It's a 1-airplane operation. And I have to run one guy as director of aviation and chief pilot, and then I have to run the other guy as chief pilot and senior captain. So because the owner wants to be able to pick and choose what job title he or she is going to pay at. So it is my view, it's not a question of multiple airplanes. Although what I will say is if you're running 2 airplanes, it's a default director of aviation. You cannot even make the argument for chief pilot. But when it's a single aircraft operation, it's a little more fluid.
Yeah.
I think it's a function of job description. If your job is hiring and firing pilots and maybe running the schedule and doing things that are associated operations type tasks, then maybe you can sell it as chief pilot. But if you're running budgets, if you're managing maintenance, if you're doing all the other ancillary tasks that have to do with making an airplane go, you're a director of aviation. So, and it's a function of the job description. And I think to our earlier point, the calculator reports have job descriptions in them now. And if you say, here's what I do, here's the job description, this matches. And if it matches, it is what it is. And the owner or whomever is just going to have to suck it up and pay the higher number. Does that help?
Yeah, there's just one last person. Just one last person we need to convince, Dr. Broyhill.
Everyone
on this call is on.
Yeah,
we're all on agreement. There's just one last person.
We're gonna pull this clip.
We got to tell.
Well, I'm happy. So sometimes, I'm happy to meet with whomever. You've had one of my reports, and it's a question of them hearing it from me. I'm always happy to do that also.
We appreciate it. No, I tell you, that is the real value because look, I think oftentimes there'll be people that aren't educated are going to, where did this number come from? What is this thing? I don't know, and I'm sure. And so having somebody like you said, neutral party, disinterested party to be able to provide some outside perspective, that is huge. So Max, any other questions on the data and the reports before we shift gears a little bit, or anything else we want to touch on?
No,
this?
I think that's it. I think that the data, just one last thing, when you present it, I think the data is very hard to argue with. I think the biggest subjectivity you get is where you classify yourself in that, or where the person you're negotiating pay with classifies you. And I think that's because that's where the big changes then happen, right, between the pay rates. And so I think that's good that you provided some color to that. And I think it's a great idea that you added the job descriptions there too, because then when you send it to somebody preemptively for them to digest, that's in front of them as well, along with the numbers.
Yeah.
So,
well, the job descriptions have been a long time coming.
Yeah, that's smart.
All right, Dr. Broyhill, last time you were on, we were talking a little bit about leadership. You had mentioned, we've all talked about this on the show many times. In business aviation, leadership is one of the things that folks really need to consider when they're going, especially if they're going to a bigger flight department and they're going to go work for another person. that plays into your decision, and maybe I'll take a little less because I'm going to work for somebody who's a great leader, or maybe there's not a good leader and you're going to need to pay me more. So, it kind of fits into the comp area a little bit, but we've identified this as a place where we definitely want to develop pilots in business aviation and increase the leadership in flight departments in general. You mentioned last time you were working on some stuff to help us out. Where are you guys at now in some of the products you're working on?
Okay, so the book that Mike Nichols and I put together, we edited it, is called The Business Aviation Book, Leading Operational Excellence. It's got 33 chapters, 10 sections, 33 chapters that is soup to nuts for everything you need to know about how to run a flight department. Everything from taxes, depreciation, operational structures, HR, compensation, of course. Guess who wrote the chapter on that? And leadership. There's a few chapters on leadership and a chapter on what's leadership versus management, and how to manage the things you do for people from a management perspective. And then all the aspects of it, there's a whole chapter on, what does depreciation look like, and what's the process like to buy or sell an airplane, and asset management and all the associated tasks. So there's a lot of pretty much everything you need to know how to run a flight department is in this book. It is, we have 27 contributors to the book. Mike and I wrote a few chapters ourselves, but we mainly edited the chapters that were provided by leaders in our industry. The book itself, I've got the final formatting of the book on my computer, and Mike and I are making one last proofread of it to make sure that we're not missing anything. And then it goes off to the printer. We've got an ISBN for it already, and I have a website, chrisbroyhillbooks.com. If you go to my website and you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see the icon for it. You can pre-order a copy now. Just keep in mind, if you buy a printed copy, it's going to be pretty expensive because it's pretty expensive to produce. The book itself is 600 pages, 8 by 11 size, and it's going to be color. So the hardback book, it's going to cost you what a textbook would cost you. And then it also be available in ebook. We're going to offer it in hardcover. We're going to offer it in ebook. And it should be
Is Dylan and I's
available
advanced copy going to be in hard, or is that going to be electronic? What can we expect?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. We'll have to discuss it.
We'll find out at the book signing.
The electronic is fine. Just so we don't want to put undue burden on you.
Well, no, it'll be out by Christmas, but we'll have to talk. It didn't occur to me about the advanced copy. We'll have to discuss that. But yeah, it's meant to be a resource for people in the industry. It's especially meant to be an academic resource for the CAM program, the MBA CAM program, because I'm chair of the testing committee on the CAM governing board. And so there's several resources that we want to get rid of that have just been around forever. For example, Sheehan's book has been around forever. We want to get rid of that one. There's a few others we want to get rid of. This consolidates a lot of those. And it's just one less, if you're studying for CAM and you want to buy all the books that are available for you to do that, it's a pretty expensive outlay.
Yeah.
If we can reduce the amount of books people have to purchase for their library or have access to, then we're helping them as well. So that's a big element of it for sure.
I'm on the website right now. We'll have a link in the show notes for folks so they can go check it out and take a look. But I'm excited. It's going to be. I think I'm going to go ebook.
Yeah,
this is good. This looks like it's going to be a pretty. That's a big novel there, but we're excited for that.
Yeah,
and
it's going to be great.
And you said you had 27 different contributors. So I mean, this is really like a kind of tapping all of the knowledge in business aviation, right?
Absolutely. We were trying. The goal was to get as many different voices in there as we could, and we wanted to grab people who were experts on their field. For example, the guy that wrote the maintenance management chapter is Mark Cheney. He was the former director of aviation for Coca-Cola Consolidated, who's a maintenance guy. So he came up through the maintenance ranks and actually led a flight department. He wrote the maintenance management chapter. It's that caliber of people. Cheryl Barden wrote the retention chapter and the hiring chapter. Jen Pickerel, who works with Cheryl, wrote the DEI chapter, which is probably, I have to tell you, DEI is not my favorite subject. I'll be the first to admit it. But Jennifer's treatment of that subject is the best thing I've ever read on it. That it balances it in a way that we as business aviation people can appreciate and implement. and not automatically get our guard up about it, because I think that's what tends to happen. We don't mean to, but it's reflexive. So, but no, her treatment of that is amazing. But the chapters everybody wrote is amazing. Steve Reckner from uh, Greystone Advisors wrote an amazing chapter on the changing role of the aviation director. And that's the lead chapter in the book. What does being an aviation director look like? And what do you need to be proficient in? It's an amazing description of all of that. So,
all right.
There's too much. It's too good to. I'd be here for like an hour telling you all about it, but it's amazing. As I go through every chapter of the proofreading process, I'm going, holy cow, this is really good. So, yeah, a lot of great writers, a lot of great experts.
I love it. Well, I am certainly looking forward to reading it. Is that a cuckoo clock that you've got in there?
That's a cuckoo clock. I've started it. Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
And so this cuckoo clock goes off. You'll notice the time has no correlation to anything. It's 12 until the hour.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it is not the top of the hour right now.
Yeah, it goes off at 12 before the hour every day. So it just is every hour on the hour at 12 before the hour. We can't fix it. There's a long story behind it that I won't bore you with.
That would actually be great for me. A clock that goes off about 12 minutes before the top of the hour is about when I need to tell me, like, hey, go put your shoes on. It's time to leave. Like, get out the door on time. One last topic we wanted to talk to you about, Dr. Broyhill. In our previous episode, we had a little training rant about some of the training that Max, as you know, flies at 121 and in 91. And so he's talking a little bit about some of the differences. And we were talking about, the challenges that exist when you're going for your business aviation, especially Part 91 training, where they've got to cater to so many people that the training they have so many boxes they have to check in a limited amount of time, and often folks walk away from the training and go, man, I didn't get everything out of the training that I got. But we hear about these specialty courses that are offered that you can do extra. And you mentioned that you had taught several of them at Flight Safety. And one of them that really piqued my curiosity was the Go, No-Go course. And I've never taken it. I've heard it's excellent. Max, I don't know if you ever have taken it, but I was just kind of curious if you could tell us a little bit specifically maybe about that course, and maybe in general why folks should maybe think about every once in a while doing some of these specialty courses.
Sure. So there was a period of time where I was in advanced training programs instructor. In fact, Flight Safety recruited me as a part-timer to do that. I was in between jobs. It was in a weird phase in my professional life, but I really enjoyed it. What I would tell you is I know that everybody goes to Flight Safety. They write these checks for however much money that they are, and it's often very expensive. But I will tell you, the advanced training programs are worth every penny. The one you mentioned, the Go No Go, there is not a course you will take in a simulator that will change your mentality as much as that one will, because all you do are takeoffs. The whole simulator is you do takeoffs, and are you going to reject or are you going to go? And changing the way that you have your decision criteria based on the length of the runway. And let me give you some background on my part for this. So when I was an F-16 instructor pilot in a Luke Air Force Base, single engine airplane, we were very non-committal about what the criteria is to aboard a takeoff, because you're thinking to yourself, well, it's a single engine airplane. I don't want to take it to the air if everything isn't working, properly. And as part of that, the fact that you had you had an ejection seat and a golden parachute to get out of there, that didn't frame thinking perhaps as much as it should have. But at the end of the day, what we used to preach is a high-speed abort is the last resort. This is a single engine airplane. High-speed abort is the last resort. If worst comes to worst, take it in the air, find a clear field, punch out, and live to fight another day. But once you get above a certain speed and you're aborting a takeoff, it's bad news. And we had this young guy who was going through training, and we didn't train him well enough. And he went to Massawa Air Base and was non-committal about an abort he should have made, or should have taken the jet into the air. And he punched out at the last minute and landed in the firewall of the airplane. So that weighs very heavily on my mind. It has for a long time. Where it comes to business aviation, if you just go back and review incidences, when has it ever turned out well when somebody made high-speed abort? Usually never, and yet people do it. And So the goal of the go-no course is to make a smarter decision based on the length of the runway. And I'll sum up instead of giving you all the nuances. Basically, when you take the runway after you've had this course, when you're giving your pre-takeoff briefing, and actually, obviously, prior to the taking the runway, you basically say, I'm either go-minded or I'm stop-minded today. If it's a shorter runway, I'm go-minded. And and the criteria for which you will abort the takeoff shrinks dramatically. Pretty much, if it's after V1, we're going for anything. And if it's between 100 knots and V1, there's only going to be one or two things we're going to stop for. So, whereas if you're stop-minded and you've got a longer runway that day, then you're going to be a little bit more conservative about what you're going to abort the takeoff for because you've got more concrete in which to do it. The goal is that when the time comes, you don't hesitate, you go. And so what the syllabus typically calls for is we talk about it in the briefing and we go through all these different scenarios. And then in the simulator, you do about 20 aborts or 20 takeoff scenarios. And you make the decision about whether you're going to abort or not abort in the moment. And then we debrief it right there in the moment in the simulator. And it changes the way you think about flying an airplane. And I mean, there are others. The energy management course is good. The CRM course is good. The upset recovery course is good. It actually, I would tell you, it's more about practicing inverted recovery, upset recovery in the same platform as you would do it. It's going through the motions. Whereas I teach upset recovery in the S211 Marchetti jet, where we get up, you upside down, get G on your ass, and we actually let you feel the vestibular forces that are associated with that. But in the simulator, it helps to do it in the jet you're in. But if you only have a budget for one of the four of them, the go-no-go course is the one you want to go to. It's the most valuable thing. It'll change the way you think about every time you take the runway, your mind will be in a different place, which I think is the best thing I can say for it.
It's so funny because so often I feel like when we're in training, the mantra is take your time in an emergency. You don't have to do anything right away. The worst thing you can do is rush, right? And
Right.
Except for the go no go, where it's like it's maybe there's probably a couple scenarios, but it's one of the ones that comes to mind where you pretty much have to make an instantaneous decision.
You do.
And
You do.
And can you talk a little bit about the pre-game mental, maybe the kind of like you said, the mental rep that you're doing beforehand? I have a short runway, long runway. That mindset you must enter into right before you advance the thrust levers. Do they cover that in the course at all?
They do. And that's basically, you make that is when you brief, we all have our pre-takeoff safety briefing. Usually it's in the chalks before we taxi. But that's when you say to the person in the cockpit, our runways, here's our balanced field distance. Here's the runway length. Today, let's say your balanced field distance is 4,000 feet and the runway's at 5,000 or 5,500 for runway. Today, I am go-minded, which basically means unless something really bad happens, unless we lose an engine just prior to V1 or something of equal ilk, we're going into the air. And we'll figure it out once we get airborne, and then we'll find a place to land either back here or at another field that has more concrete. But what that helps you do is when that moment occurs and you've got your hands on the throttles or your hands are just getting ready to come off the throttles, you don't second guess. It's just, I'm go-minded, I'm going. And that, it's mental baggage that you no longer have. You don't have to take that extra 2 or 3 milliseconds to think about what the course of action is going to be. I'm going.
Yep.
Those two things didn't happen, I'm going. And that's really, I think, the biggest favor it does for you. And that's kind of where the mental piece of it comes into play.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's interesting.
So it's about a day. It's like an extra day commitment. Typically.
It's an extra day. Yeah, and typically it's just a simulator. It's like one simulator session, and I'm telling you, it's worth every penny. And I'm not here to sell products for flight safety, believe me, but it's worth every penny. It will change the way you think.
That's really good because that's a whole nother dimension of because usually it's just a standard, we're gonna before V1 or between 80 knots and V1, everyone has their standard brief, right? Not being cognizant of your relationship between how much concrete you have and what your balanced field length actually is, right? And so I think that certainly requires some additional thought and consideration.
My favorite piece of thing that when people brief this is if we're between 80 knots and V1 or we're close to V1, whatever it is, we're going to abort for a blown tire. And I'm like, why would you do that? So what's your stopping distance now with a blown tire? Show me the chart in the aircraft flight manual that shows me what your stopping distance is now with a blown tire. Every time somebody's aborted for a blown tire, it has never, ever gone well. Take it into the air, leave the gear down, Find a long piece of concrete and land. It's not going to hurt you, and you'll live to fight another day. But aborting for a blown tire is like the dumbest thing ever, particularly if you're in the high speed regime. When you're low speed, obviously that's that's a gimme. But if you're in the high speed regime, and you're aborting for a blown tire, boy, you need to think about that really hard.
Do you see, like, to me, that would be the most interesting thing as the instructor, where you see these guys doing batting practice and doing the same aborts. What is there one that you think that people screw up? Is it the blown tire? Is that the one that really gets people, or is there one?
You'd be surprised. So we had these guys in a simulator, and I was teaching. It was in the Falcon 2000, the Falcon 2000 Easy, and it wasn't the blown. So the blown tire, yes, that can be a showstopper because their instinct is going to be to abort because that's what everybody breathes. That's what everybody does. So you get them through that one. But then you'd be surprised how many people will abort a takeoff just over a V1 with an engine failure. It'll shock you. Or continue to take off below V1 with an engine failure. I've seen both. It's like something we brief and we talk about every day. But so you know how it is when you go to a normal recurrence sim. You know, okay, this is V1 cut day. We're going to have so many of this, and so you're kind of leaning forward. You know it's going to happen. You're going to do it. But when there's so many other things that could possibly occur on the takeoff roll, because we don't say, okay, this one we're going to practice this, or this one we're going to practice this. Instead, there's a whole group of stuff of malfunctions we can choose for you to abort or not abort, and we're going to throw one at you, and you got to react in the moment. You would be surprised how many people continue to take off when they lose an engine under V1 or try to abort after V1. It's the damnedest thing. It's like all the training that they normally do just goes out the window because they're in an abort sim. And what do we do? So that's the thing we had this one crew, they did the same thing 3 times. They continued to take off with an engine failure below V1. It was like,
listen, that's the place to do it though, is in the simulator and work that out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I agree. And it certainly was a learning moment for them, but it just shows you how, regimented we get in our thought processes sometimes, especially in the cockpit.
I think another thing that's interesting with that, that I'll add is just flying two different like one airplane that's more archaic than the other, and you have the benefit with an ICAS of automatic inhibition of messages, right? Based on speed.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
And in older airplanes, you don't, dude. The light comes up, the light comes on for whatever, like whatever.
Right.
Like the fuel sloshes in the center tank and you get low pressure for a second, or it could be an engine fire. Like
that's a good
the light
point.
just comes on. There's no discriminating. And I think that makes it even more important to have your mindset right and figure out and brief it and really have things figured out, because you could get anything right before V1. You could get a light for in this, you got to figure out what it is. A lot of times it just directs you to a panel. You don't know. You got to look up at lights up here to figure out what actually, I mean, it could just say fuel and you have to look and say, oh, what is that, a fuel filter bypass, or is it a fuel pump pressure low, or like what? Like it's a lot more dynamic in older airplanes that have enunciators versus an ICAS. And it makes it even that much more difficult.
And the newer technology has got some of its issues. So I taught advanced go, no-go in the 7X. And one of the things we would teach people and this doesn't, the warning on the panel, just don't quote me, I think this is true. I'm current in the 7X right now, and I can't remember this. Maybe must be the Martinis. Anyway, but it can go into backup laws. You've got normal laws, you've got alternate laws, you've got direct laws, then you've got backup. And backup exists as a mode to merely get you to a place where you can control the airplane and reset the flight control system and get back to some level of higher functionality. But that was one of the few things on the runway that you would abort for just prior to V1, because if it goes into backup, your pitch control is purely the pitch trim, and your rudder control is the rudder trim. That's the only control you have of the airplane. The stick doesn't work. It's just the trim. So to get people to abort. So to get people to abort for that, how likely is that to happen? How likely is it for you to lose an engine prior to takeoff? But for people to be listening now and realizing, hey, there's something else that, if I'm in a go situation, this is what I'm going to actually stop for, because I cannot control the airplane. And then, of course, we get this experienced 7X guy, and the backup thing comes on, and he just, as cool as a cucumber, just leans back and hits the pitch trim and just flies right off the runway as good as you please, and just flies around the pattern. We made him land it that way, and he did. So
it's like playing a video game.
That's right.
Maybe ultimately
Anyway.
with AI, that can think faster than us, but we'll just have a big light that says abort or continue, and it just
Yeah.
lights up. It figures
Yeah.
out, all the nuance and everything, and you just do what it, it sorts it all out in a millisecond instead of us having to figure it all out.
In a way, it's kind of funny, but you have to imagine that's gonna be on the horizon at some point. You're gonna have all your takeoff data in there, and it's gonna know the parameters. And it's like I said, that decision, you're probably going 100 knots while you're trying to make that decision. So it's so quick, but
you're eating up ground. So 100 knots. So the fighter pilot constant is 1.69. 1 knot equals 1.69 feet per second. So if you're going 100 knots, you are going 169 feet a second. So that's a lot of ground you're covering in a very small period of time. 3 seconds, you're gone 600 feet down the runway. So there's not a lot of time involved, particularly if the end of the runway is coming up pretty quickly.
That's good. All right. Well, I'm going to look into that program next time. I think that sounds like something that would definitely be worth the time, because I think for me it's getting in that mindset before takeoff. That it kind of reminds me of like sports in a way, where you're kind of psyching, I'm getting up to bat or whatever, I'm ready to hit this golf shot. It's like I've got to get that mental focus here, especially because I know I've got to make a very critical, maybe the most critical decision of the flight potentially here in the next few seconds. So this is really the time to lock in. So
absolutely.
Very interesting. Anything else before we wrap up here, folks?
I appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys every quarter, and I'm here for anybody who's needs some compensation advice. All they need to do is reach out.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Broyhill, we always enjoy speaking with you. The contributions you're making to business aviation, can't say enough about how valuable they are for folks. So thank you for all of the hard work that you've put in this year. We're looking forward to the book. We'll have a link in the show notes to where you can pre-order that. And next time we chat with you, hopefully we'll be able to discuss some of the topics that you look at.
Sure. You bet.
And looking forward to that as well. So
always learn something when you're on the show, Dr. Broyhill. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Good. Glad to help.
All right. That is going to do it for this episode. All of Dr. Broyhill's information will be in the show notes. Until next time, remember, flexibility is the key to air power.
Is the key to justifying your compensation.
That's right.
Yo, the doc's back in town with the comp game tight, dropping data from the charts like runway lights, talking pay rates, season pilots holding the line, business jet wages still climbing just fine, but the word on the street, slowing that pace, COVID catch up done, it's a marathon race, 10% last year, now it's half that size, still twice the industry, so we on the rise. He said don't slam that report, bring class not fight, ask why you're short, keep the tone polite, know your percentile, come prepped and smart, don't price fix, hanger talk, that's a federal art, now he's writing that book, stacking pages thick, leadership and lessons all laid out slick, aircon flow, straight facts, no hype, Dr. Broyhill dropping data, pilots earn that stripe, it's the frequency, pilots tune in and vibe, 21.5, where the pros come alive, checklist, jet fuel, and stories that fly high, it's the cockpit crew, now let's take it sky high.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.